Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, The Buck, Kirk Buchner, owner, operator of NotInHallOfFame.com and its sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My apologies, as it's been a while since we've done a podcast, but the chairman's done a big move. I am now in the sunny, although raining right now, Barbados, where I've got a nice beer in hand. Of course, I would have had a beer in hand in Canada, but that's all good. And what we're doing right now is doing part 2 of our 8-part series about people who probably should be looked at for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we're splitting it up into 8 parts, concentrating on players from each division. Last time we had Vinny Lospinuso, the 19-year-old who knows more about pro football than all of us combined. He is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to football history, and it's a lot of fun talking to him. Last time we looked at the AFC West, and we're going to bring Vinny back for a look at the AFC South. 2 teams really don't have a whole lot, but 2 of them do. So sit back, relax, crack open a cold one, and here comes Vinny. Mr. Lospinuso, it's so great to have you back. I'm so sorry about the delay, but a man's got to move when a man's told to move by his wife. And Barbados has been really nice, I got to say. First week, it's different than the Canadian mountains.
Oh yeah, you're going from polar bears and to palm trees. It's pretty stark contrast. I can tell.
Yeah, it is. It's been definitely very unique. I could probably just do a series of just podcasts just about living here, but that's not what people want to hear. I think we want to follow up with what we did a few weeks ago. I know the next one won't take as nearly as long, but we covered people from the AFC West. Those who should be considered for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Just to recap, you and I are both in agreement of a much larger Pro Football Hall of Fame. And
bigger is better, baby.
Bigger is better. I thought you were from Long Island, not Texas.
Well, no, I'm from Long Island.
Yeah, well, hence it's long. Yeah, there you go. Forgive the horrible puns. I'm very, very good at that. We went from the AFC West. Now you said let you gave the opportunity to pick the next division. You went AFC South, but you sent me a message. You've got a couple ones that you want to just tack on as an addendum to, I believe, the Raiders from our AFC West conversation.
Yes, because we had a great time mentioning the lovely candidacy of guys like Phil Villapiano and Matt Millen. Well, by the way, the reason why Villapiano has gotten big is because his daughter has had a cold campaign, but there's better Raiders than Villapiano. In fact, one of them just died recently, which we didn't get to talk about because of Villapiano, and that is Clem Daniels. Clem Daniels played for the Dallas Texans, a.k.a. the Chiefs, back in 1960, and he was one of the best Raiders in the AFL era, and he was also, like Paul Lowe, first team all AFL. So AFL all-time team, first team. And even though that Paul Lowe was a little bit higher, Daniels kind of edged him out a little bit because even though his career was shorter, he was the AFL's all-time rushing leader. Absolutely incredible, considering his career only spanned 9 seasons. And he made it first team. I mean, that's really incredible, I would say. I mean, I don't understand why Raiders fans don't push for him. I mean, I don't get why Raiders fans just don't like their history, it seems. I mean, really? I understand, in that era, maybe not as many people know about it, but at the same time, you can at least do your research.
Right. Well, right now the Raiders fans are lucky to even have a team in Oakland, so...
For now.
For now. Do you know what I read? I read the strangest article that there were, and I didn't see if this was like a tongue-in-cheek thing. It wasn't on April Fool's unless it was, and then I was just drinking a lot that day, which I drink a lot more because I can. About the Raiders having one of their home season games or an exhibition game in Saskatchewan of all places.
I've heard about that. And they're going to be having, the international series, which I love. And they're going to have one. They're going to be against the Bears, which I expect them to get absolutely shredded that day.
I can't even imagine having an NFL game in Saskatchewan. And it's not so much a shot at the people of Saskatchewan, I don't know if you're aware of this, and probably not, because I'm guessing you don't pay a lot of attention to Canadian football, but one of the most devoted fan bases is that of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Having said that, it's not like it's a very large stadium, so I can't imagine that we're really looking at huge revenue.
Didn't CFL also have like the Ottawa Rough Riders for like they had it for like 100 years and then they folded in like the early 90s or something like that?
Yeah. There. I can't remember the comedian who's had this joke about that, and it was like it's like there was only 9 teams in the league, and so like there's the other team that comes in. Okay, so we want to be called the Rough Riders. No, that's taken. Okay, so we'll be called the.
Why do they have that? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you have 2 teams that are named the exact same?
I have no idea. I no idea. They were spelled differently for what it's worth. One team had it as 2 words. One had it as 1.
It's still the same thing.
I don't know what to tell you other than we did it. That it made sense at the time. I'm sure that was decided years before I was ever born.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could tell, considering that people today, they would obviously not do that.
Well, you'd like to think so, but there have been some awful team names, and
yeah, you got a good point.
Yeah, I mean, in every sport, for that matter. I was doing another piece of work on the Atlanta Braves and some of their history, because the top 50 of that franchise will go up soon. And some of the names they used to have, I mean, like they used to be called the Boston Bean Eaters. Like, why would you want to be called that?
I've heard about that, and also, funny enough, the Redskins were originally from Boston. They were called the Boston Braves at first.
Yeah, and at one point, there was the St. Louis Cardinals in both football and baseball. So, I mean, there's idiocy in every sport. Also, there's the Utah Jazz. I'm pretty sure that the jazz culture in Salt Lake City isn't too strong.
I don't know. Yeah, because whenever you think of the jazz music, you immediately think of mountains and Karl Malone, but mostly mountains.
It's just one of those things, like when you change the city, just change the name. But, I mean, they didn't do it for the Memphis Grizzlies.
But then again, you have to go a little bit further north to find a Grizzly in BC.
Yeah, but at least you got the right province. And
That's
you
true.
And you don't have to go that far.
You're not going to find a grizzly bear in Tennessee.
Probably not, although I hear some of the women are pretty ample-sized. But I digress. Let's just go right to the AFC South. I think we'll just start alphabetically. I'm thinking we're just going to go right to the Houston Texans, and this will probably take less time than our debate about the Riders, because other than Andre Johnson and J.J. Watt, I don't have anybody that I think sums it up right now. What do you think?
I agree. There is literally no one else. I mean, you could maybe say Arian Foster, but there's other backs that had short careers as well, and they have done far more, like Terrell Davis and Gale Sayers. Arian Foster, he only has like one All-Pro nod. I mean, yeah, he's not making it. It's really just Andre Johnson, who was very underrated for his time. I mean, and unlike other players like Randy Moss or Marvin Harrison, who had great quarterbacks that were throwing to him, Andre Johnson had David Carr, Matt Schaub, who was okay, Ryan Fitzpatrick he also had Ryan Mallett. I mean, not exactly the flashiest names in the world.
That's going to be the only time Ryan Mallett will ever be named in a Hall of Fame discussion.
That is true. Unless you potentially mention Terrell Suggs, but you can mention how he was on the Ravens teams for a few years. But even then, but then again, he's more synonymous with the Texans than he's at the league. So go figure, I guess.
So I was reading a piece but right before we were talking. So it was from the Fansided. And this one article was sort of suggesting that Johnson would get in either the second or third ballot. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. I think he's going to get in eventually, but it might be closer to 10th. I see Tim Brown territory.
I don't think it's that long, but I simply think Isaac Bruce, when he retired, he was second all time in receiving yards, and he didn't even make it yet. So what the hell makes you think that Andre Johnson's going to make it second or third ballot?
Right, exactly.
Isaac Bruce hasn't made it yet. Torrey Holt hasn't made it yet. Another guy I'm going to mention down here hasn't made it yet. And, Steve Smith, he's coming up soon. You also have Hines Ward on there still. You have Chad Johnson on there. You have a ton of wide receivers there.
And 3 of those guys you just mentioned haven't even been finalists yet.
Exactly.
So I think Johnson will wait.
Have a better chance, but it might be a little while.
Yeah, and I think you made an excellent point. Voters are going to have to sort of look at who he had as their quarterback.
Yeah, Andre Johnson's going to help. You have that. You also have Calvin Johnson. Almost forgot about him.
Oh, Megatron will be coming up soon.
Oh, again, this is why I want them to increase the max, because especially considering that the wide receiver position is also kind of synonymous with quote unquote personality, as some like to say. Mm-hmm. And many people I don't say that, but others do. Usually a lot of these players could also be a little bit diva-ish, and as we remember with the whole Terrell Owens fiasco. Usually, fans, especially the ones that tend to be a little bit more in favor of that, that kind of connect with those personalities, get very, very angry, and some even say it's a racial issue, which I don't think so. I think that's a bit extreme. They could have a case, but I think that's a bit of a stretch.
I'd agree with you. I think a big part of this was more of a personality issue. I think everyone in that room knows that T.O. was a Hall of Famer, but nobody really wanted to give it to him first year, which is a wrong attitude in my opinion, but that was, I think, what they were looking at. And I don't think Andre Johnson has that issue. Is there any point even discussing J.J. Watt? I think at this point he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
There's no question in my mind. J.J. Watt, if he was to retire today, he probably would not be in the first ballot. He would probably take a couple of years. But you just look at his resume. 5-time Pro Bowler. 5-time first-team All-Pro. Yes, the 2016 and 2017 were muddled with injuries. But afterwards, in 2018, he had a massive bounce-back year. If it wasn't for Andrew Luck, he would have won Comeback Player of the Year. And 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. 3 times. The only other guy to do that was Lawrence Taylor. And
you just talked about the character issue. Watt just donated how much, or raised how many millions for disaster relief in Houston?
Hundreds of millions.
Right. This guy should be a lock. So I think we're done with Houston. No disrespect to the fans of the Houston Texans, but I think even those fans would have to agree, right?
I would have mentioned that with one thing. People my age are less prone to care about quote unquote character as the older guard. True. So I definitely feel like, in the future we will see less of these issues with character.
I think it depends on what it is that they do. Because now if you're looking at anything that's sort of if you're more of a goof like off field in terms of being a locker room disruption or anything like that, sure. Now they're also looking a lot harder on some of the things that spousal abuse, rape, domestic issues, things like that are a much bigger deal. And that shit's been going on for decades. And not just the NFL, but in every league, and it's not even in sports. It's just all it's in a worldwide issue. And I think for that particular thing, that will be highly scrutinized. Whereas other things, yeah, I'd agree with you.
But even then, later when we talk about Adrian Peterson, even with the whole thing with his child, I don't think that's going to get brought up. Some people might say so, but I just don't think that's going to get brought up because honestly, even then, he's still Adrian Peterson. That's what's going to come down to it at the end of the day.
And Mike Vick, he pretty much escaped being, everything he did to dogs, or also to the Ron Mexico thing, which is the funniest thing ever. But that's another story for another time.
Yeah. And then now let's get to the Baltimore/Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, of course, they started out in the early 50s, part of Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Then one day, Robert Irsay packed up the bags, went on a truck, and moved the team to Indianapolis, Indiana, where they've been there ever since. Don't worry, Baltimore, you got a team back, but you just have to rip it from someone else.
They also had the only American team to win the CFL championship, the Grey Cup.
Yes, they did. The Baltimore, what was it, like the Baltimore Stallions, was it?
I think that originally they were trying to call it the Colts, and it was the Stallions, and then they came up with the name Baltimore Football Club. And then they got the Ravens, and then that was the end of the idiotic experiment to move into the United States. So much for us ever discussing the great history of the Sacramento gold miners.
Oh, man. Who can ever forget the Sacramento gold miners? It's simple. I don't know who they are, and neither do you.
Somewhere, though, in my hat collection, I actually do have a Sacramento gold miners hat.
Oh, now that you mention it, I actually remember seeing someone wearing an old XFL hat. Also, by the way, R.I.P. AAF. R.I.P. AAF.
Oh, my God.
What a disaster that thing was.
Yeah, when the XFL was a bigger success than you, that says it all, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does.
So Vinny, I got two questions for you that I wanted to ask you about the Colts. So first question is, and then I'll get to the second one. Are there any Baltimore Colts left that you think should be inducted?
Yes, there are a number of them. There are actually.
Oh wow! Okay. How many?
There are a couple.
Okay.
There is one, two, and I'm gonna cheat a little bit here and add both someone who also played in Indianapolis and someone who wasn't even a player. So if you're counting that, there is a total of 6 guys on here that were associated with the Colts when they were in Baltimore that I have on this list.
All right, fire away.
Now, I first want to mention this guy, Mike Curtis. Mike Curtis is not the first guy on my list when it comes to the best Colts, not in the Hall of Fame, but you would ask Colts fans and also fans of NFL in the 70s, they always are going to mention Mike Curtis, and they're going to relentlessly mention Mike Curtis' name. Mike Curtis is, like I said, he's the most requested senior candidate by Colts fans. He won the Super Bowl in Super Bowl V, and he also made the Super Bowl III, where they lost. He also made a key pass in leading to the game-winning field goal from the Colts. He had 4 Pro Bowls, should be 5, because one of them was a first-team All-Pro. He was the AFC Defensive Player of the Year in 1970. Also, he was an All-Pro. He was the only one to ever be an All-Pro, both outside linebacker to middle linebacker, and most importantly, he's in the Hall of Very Good class of 2013.
Oh, you love that.
Oh, I absolutely love it.
I think that's going to be our trend.
Oh, yeah. To show how it's just like, I always hate when people use that term. I always liked it in that way to show that, I just hate the term. But in all fairness, Mike Curtis, he was good for them. I can tell you that, Vito Celino from Jacksonville, he doesn't see him as a Hall of Famer. He sees him as, I think he's just very good. Don't speak to a Colts fan, Vito. I think if you were to say that to them, they would probably just murder you with their words. So.
Okay, who else you got?
Well, that's nothing against you, Vito. I mean, just saying, don't say that to them. But when it comes to Mike Curtis, he never made an all-decade team either for the 60s or the 70s. But again, with the 70s, you can understand because Gradishar has far more on his plate than Curtis. And as for the 60s, Tommy Nobis isn't in yet. So I don't think Mike Curtis is going to get in before Tommy Nobis does. But he's not the best former Colts player that I think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But unlike Mike Curtis, he didn't have the fortune of playing a longer career. And this guy basically was the Jerry Kramer of the Colts. What I mean by that is that he was essential to a iconic play in NFL history from an iconic game in NFL history. And that was the fullback from the 1950s, Alan Amici.
That's an interesting one. Okay. And that's the one you think is the most deserving Baltimore Colt?
Yes, that is. I think he's the most deserving one because his career was short. But when his career was going, it came out the gate very, very hot. He won the Rookie of the Year in 1955. He also got the rushing title as a rookie, as well as touchdowns as a rookie. I mean, it was a really, really phenomenal rookie season. He also was a 4-time Pro Bowler and a 4-time All-Pro, and he made the 1950s All-Decade team. He's only one of 4 players from the All-Decade team, that 1950s All-Decade team, that's not in the Hall of Fame yet. The other 3 guys I will mention down the line, he was a 2-time NFL championship, and the first time that famous touchdown where he leaped over in the greatest game ever played when the Colts beat the Giants in the 1958 NFL championship game. That was the last time in a championship game in which it was a go-ahead overtime touchdown. The last time that happened was the latest time that happened afterwards was when James White ran in through it and turned the city of Atlanta into a laughing stock from a lot of people. I mean, I really do feel bad for them.
So run down the other 4 you got.
These ones, there was one, there's Bobby Boyd, who class of 2015, and Boyd is in the very good class of 2007, the same year that he passed. He's only one. The thing with Bobby Boyd, he played in an era in which they weren't known for passing the ball as much, of course, but he found a way to catch it all the time. He led the NFL in interceptions in 1965. And when he retired, he finished 3rd all-time in interceptions. All-time. When he retired in 1968. The only other 2 guys that were in front of him were Emlyn Tunnell and Dick Night Train Lane. And those 2 guys are in the Hall of Fame. They're legends.
Is there a better nickname than the Night Train?
Dick Night Train Lane for the Rams?
Yeah, I don't think there is. Other than maybe Dr. Doom.
Robert Brazil?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, Bobby Boyd might not have ever won a championship when he was with the Colts because, his career was kind of short from 1960 to 1968. He retired after they lost the Super Bowl to the Jets. But those Colts teams that he was on had a record of 35-6-1. Those Colts teams, when he was on there, they were dominant. They were very, very dominant.
Yeah, Boyd's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said very good.
Very good for now, but soon you'll be great.
Love it.
This one's a little bit of a this one's a bit of a stretch here, but I also have Bob Vogel on here.
Okay.
He was the blindside protector for the Colts during that era, 1963 to 1972. He was a 5-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, and he did go to both those Super Bowl III and Super Bowl V, winning Super Bowl V. But I feel that's a bit of a stretch. I mean, I would not focus on Vogel before we get Amici, Curtis, and Boyd in first.
Okay.
But I'm just listing those. Any other Colts that you were thinking of?
No, not from Baltimore.
Oh, and one more Colt from Baltimore that I should mention. This one, out of all the Colts, I want him the most, and more than Amici, and he never even played. Carroll Rosenblum.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Carroll Rosenblum is, in my opinion, the best owner not in the Hall of Fame right now. He was not only influential for the Colts, he was also very, very major for the Los Angeles Rams. Because I have him so much on my sheet. He actually founded the Colts. He also, when he left the Colts to become the owner of the Rams, because he and Robert Irsay switched places, Mike Curtis credited him as the reason why the Colts were dominant for so long. He says, even though the coaches were great, I can't say that it was because of them. Who hired them? It was Rosenblum. The Colts were very, very dominant during this period with 3 NFL championships, a Super Bowl V championship. He also was a very big influencer on the NFL himself. He influenced the modern NFL in many ways as well because he was the guy that suggested to the other owners, hey, this guy Pete Rozelle, he might be a good successor to Burt Bell. And they said, hell, but let's go with him. And Pete Rozelle is the most revered commissioner in the history of the NFL. And Rozelle often worked with Rosenblum when it came to trying to spearhead like equal revenue in terms of like the TV contracts among the NFL franchises, and it did help make the league profitable. And with the help that Carol Rosenblum did with Pete Rozelle, he helped turn the NFL and American football in general become the most watched sport in the U.S., surpassing baseball.
And there's something, yeah. So there's definitely a lot to be said about that for sure. I remember sort of becoming very familiar with him, actually reading Howard Cosell's book a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was also the reason. Also, in case you're wondering who played a major role in why the merger happened, that was Rosenblum. Also, you know those luxury boxes, and the reason as to why those stadiums make all that money? Do you want to know who came up with that idea? That was Rosenblum. That was him. Do you want to know who also helped make those contracts for CBS and NBC? Again, that was Rosenblum. Rosenblum did all of this stuff.
Well, for your point on luxury boxes, I generally hate them unless I get to be in one.
Oh yeah, that's with everyone. That's with literally everyone. But he was a revolutionary guy for his time. I mean, all these things we look at now and we take it for granted. But back then, these were just massive, just radical changes. And that was him who created all this stuff. He helped all this stuff.
Vinny, do you hear your passion on this one? This is the most passionate I think you're going to be today.
And you look at, because the other one's Rosenblum. And then when he went, even when his ownership, he had a winning percentage of 660. Wow. And this is both with his time with the Colts and the Rams combined. And when he was the owner of the Rams, 7 straight division titles, as well as 5 straight NFC championships. Funny enough, the one that they did end up winning was the year that he unfortunately drowned due to suffering a heart attack out at sea. And that's why we got Georgia.
She's still there, isn't she?
No. He was married to Georgia Frontieri.
No. Isn't she still the owner?
Oh, no. Georgia died in 2008.
Oh, did she? Okay, I did not even know that.
You never heard of Stan Kroenke?
I have, yeah. So, my bad. Yes, Stan Kroenke, owner of the Nuggets, too.
And the Avalanche. Can't forget about that.
I actually did not know that.
But then again, his son Josh tends to help the Nuggets, not the Nuggets, the Avalanche more than he does.
Well, not a whole lot lately.
Yeah, you look at like Rosenblum. Granted, I may want Amici and Curtis, but Rosenblum, he has so much stuff in front of him. When it came to owners, everyone was clamoring for Pat Bowlen. We obviously remember in the last part that Broncos fans were literally browbeating people to try to get Pat Bowlen. And Robert Kraft, even with his happy ending down in Florida, I still think he definitely, without question, he created the greatest dynasty maybe ever. He definitely deserves it too. But there's something that has to be said about Carol Rosenblum.
Mm-hmm.
That makes you say, "Wow." Yes, Robert Kraft helped make the Patriots a superpower, but Rosenblum is the one that made the NFL a superpower.
I like this. Okay, so here's my second big question for you with the Colts.
Yeah.
Reggie Wayne or Edgerrin James? Now, I think they both should get in, but who do you want more?
Well, I am indifferent towards both of them, but I can tell you right now that Edgerrin James is going to make it in first because Wayne is coming up in his first year of eligibility. Edgerrin James, this is his 5th year of eligibility. First year, semi. Second year, round of 15. Third year, semi. Fourth year, round of 15. Top 15, and then this year he made it top 10. So I think he might go back down to the top 10. My guess is that he'll make it in the next 2-3 years. James will make it in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Wayne's not getting in first ballot. I think it'll be a few years for him, but not long.
No, it's going to be a while for Wayne, especially we already mentioned out Andre Johnson. You also mentioned Hines Ward, and like I said, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt and Chad Johnson. All these guys aren't there yet, so it's going to be tough. I mean, I'm really interested to see how the whole thing with the wide receivers go, and you also know that with that, also the people that's very connected with those players, for instance, what's his name? The guy from the Young Turks Network. What's his name? Robert. Name escapes me, but he he's going to find a way to make this an issue because that's just his first. He folds under the slightest pressure. That guy.
Who do you have beyond those two?
Robert Littall. What do you mean, Wayne or James?
Yeah, Wayne or James, because I think these are people that everyone sort of thinks should be, and probably will be, but there's a second tier of Indianapolis Colts that I think are worth discussing.
Well, we got to mention this first. Peyton Manning is going to get in as soon as the door is opened. He's going to bolt in. If Brett Favre can make it within 6 seconds, Manning will make it in within half a second. He'll say, okay, Peyton next. It's going to be like that instant. And also another guy that retired not too long ago, Dwight Freeney, who he was first team all-decade in the 2000s. And after his time with the Colts, he spent a couple years with the Chargers and with the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Seahawks, and Lions. But obviously he's a Colt. Without a question, he is known as a Colt. And there's another defensive player, Robert Mathis, who was also very dominant during that time as well, and was AFC Defensive Player of the Year in 2013. He was very dominant, also with the sacks. He was sort of like a Simeon Rice almost to Dwight Freeney, I would say. Mathis, I think, could have a chance, but not before some of these other guys.
Yeah, I like that. Although here's the other question then, when you bring up Peyton Manning, is there enough bronze to actually do a bust of his forehead?
That's a good question. I think you're gonna have to find some of the ancient the stuff they had in China when they made the bronze. That's how important the bronze has to be. It has to be bronze so special that it's probably the shine. It's probably going to shine brighter than the scandal involving Papa John.
Nice. Who else you got for Indianapolis?
Chris Hinton,
yep,
the guy that was
definitely.
Chris Hinton. He was the guy that was we always talk about the John Elway trade, but you question what did they give up? Well, the guy they gave up was Chris Hinton, who was a great player for the Colts for many years, and unfortunately, the thing that kind of people don't look at is because during the '80s he didn't make an All-Decade team, but he did. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler. He was one first-team All-Pro, but he was a 6-time second-team All-Pro. So that definitely did hurt him in a sense, the fact that he only made the first team 1 time and he made second team 6 times. Which, to be fair, when it comes to me, All-Pro is All-Pro. That's kind of how I look at it. And in the time they made it first-team All-Pro, he wasn't even a Pro Bowl. So I always look at it as if you make an All-Pro and if you're not a Pro Bowler, it's essentially a de facto All-Pro. It's essentially a de facto Pro Bowl. That's how I see it. So essentially a de facto 8-time Pro Bowler and de facto 7-time All-Pro. That is amazing, and it really is a little bit sad that Hinton's name is not mentioned as much because he has on my chart that it has right here of showing all the times that players have been semis and whatnot. Chris Hinton was a semifinalist a couple of years ago. He was a semifinalist in 2017. That was the only time he's ever been a semifinalist, and I do wish his name was mentioned more.
And it's not. It hasn't been. I don't know if that's ever going to change. I was actually very pleasantly surprised that he even got that semifinal nod.
I think it'll happen sooner rather than later, but also I'm more of an optimist with this stuff, and also I'm a little bit more aggressive when it comes to pushing for guys.
Right.
But I do feel like after Curtis and Amici and maybe Boyd, they would go to Hinton. I think they would. It would probably just go like chronological, but of course, as I say, not before Rosenblum. But even though they're fighting for different things. But, there's another offensive lineman as well that's in the same boat as Hinton, but he retired a bit sooner, and that was Jeff Saturday. He was known as one of the best. He was arguably the best center in the league during his time. But the reason why he's not an All-Pro and all on Cruz is because Saturday's prime was between the late 2000s. Was in the late 2000s. Cruz his prime was throughout it, and when Saturday played, he had more All-Pros than Cruz, but because Cruz didn't play, because his Pro Bowls were kind of spread out, whereas Saturdays were like in the middle of 2000. That's why Cruz is an all-decade All-Pro, and Saturday is not. So, because of when he was drafted and when he retired, that kind of hurt his chances of getting an all-decade, which I don't think is fair because nothing against Cruz, but Saturday was a better player by all counts. He has more All-Pros. His teams were more successful, and he was known as a far more dominant player. And, more people are going to say that Saturday is more deserving than Cruz, and I can't blame him because he is. I mean, just because you're someone on the all-decade team does not mean there's someone that, that isn't on there that's better because nothing against Cruz, but I'm just saying, Saturday, the only thing that went against him, the only reason why that didn't happen for him was because he decided to, because his prime happened a little bit later, and he was better.
Do you have anyone else left from Indianapolis that you think deserves some consideration?
Anyone else from Indianapolis? Well, I'll tell you the only active player, and that's Adam Vinatieri.
Yep.
End discussion. Adam Vinatieri, the greatest kicker of all time, easily, more points than anyone else, more attempts than anyone else, being Morton Anderson. Vinatieri, absolutely, he's not going to be first ballot, but he will make the Hall of Fame. And he should make the Hall of Fame, as he rightfully should. And, I will mention he made the All-Decade team in the 2000s. There's another guy in the All-Decade team in the 2000s that was a kicker. I will mention them down the line, but Vinatieri, absolutely, without question, is a future Hall of Famer.
Is he coming back?
And that's it with the Colts.
Is he coming back this year, you think?
Yeah, Vinatieri signed a 1-year contract.
Oh, did he? Okay. Well, there you go. All right, so this one will take, this will be a one and done. Jacksonville Jaguars.
Tony Baselli, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. He's going to get in eventually. Beyond him.
He was a top 10 the last 2 years. He would actually take that back. He was a top 10 the last 3 years. Baselli will make it. I think he's going to make it this year. I think he will make it this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Is there anyone else that's really worthy of discussion that was a former Jaguar? And no, Blake Bortles doesn't count.
You're right. You're right. I should mention Blaine Gabbert instead. No, seriousness. There are two guys, but one has a better chance together. There's Fred Taylor, who did once mention and comment how the writers need to understand that his body of work, because of his injuries, it kind of hampered him a little bit. That's why he was a one-time All-Pro and one-time Pro Bowler. But when he retired, in terms of non-active, other than Frank Gore, Adrian Peterson, and Edgerrin James, he has the most amount of rushing yards by a player not in the Hall of Fame. So if you don't count the three that are either still playing or will make it in a couple years, Fred Taylor has the most amount of rushing yards.
Yeah, but he's not really a Hall of Fame guy. Just like I feel the same about Gore.
I'll mention him soon, but Gore has far more on his plate. I have a lot to say about him. If you think Rosenblum was big, wait till you see Frank Gore.
Oh, I'm waiting now. I definitely want to hear about that. All right, I think we're done with Jacksonville. Sorry to the city of Jacksonville, but yeah, it's just not there. I think you've got a whole lot more just from the former Houston Oilers. I want to see if you've got, because we're going to go to the Tennessee Titans to wrap up the division. Do you have any Houston Oilers that have been left behind?
I would say that all of the ones that are not active are former Houston Oilers.
Okay.
All of them. Now, this one's a little bit interesting.
All right, yeah, hit me up. What do you got?
The best Oiler not in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, is Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Okay. You're going to have to sell me on this one.
Billy White Shoes Johnson, because of one reason. He's the only member of the 75th anniversary team that's not in the Hall of Fame. The only guy. He also made the 70s All-Decade team and the 80s All-Decade team, and is known as one of the best return specialists of all time. He was so good that he made the 75th anniversary team. He's the only player from that anniversary team that's not in the Hall of Fame yet. That's really the major reason as to why I want him the most, just so I could finally end that quota. Just how Jerry Kramer ended the quota with the 50th anniversary team, White Shoes would do the same thing with the 75th. However, unlike Kramer, it's a lot trickier. But in the sense of filling that quota, I kind of want that to happen. I know it's a little bit more of a controversial pick, but when you're the only guy from the 75th anniversary team that's not in, it does feel a little bit off.
No, I hear you. I mean, I've always thought of him more as of a gimmicky player, but he wouldn't be out of place there either.
Oh no, he wouldn't. I mean, he has to be good to be on the 70th All-Decade team, 80s All-Decade team, and the 75th anniversary team. I mean, he was on 2 All-Decade teams and the 75th anniversary team. No one else has that.
Not even Carol Rosenblum.
What?
Not even Carol Rosenblum.
No. I mean, well, then again, Carol Rosenblum never played. And, White Shoes also was the comeback player of the year in 1983 when he was with the Falcons. But the reason why it happened with the Oilers is because that's when he had his 2 first-team All-Pros. Even though he was an 80s All-Decade team, first team with the Falcons, he was second team with the Oilers.
All right, so if he's your top Oiler, do you have anyone else?
Well, I have Bob Talamini right here. And I also have Charlie Hennigan. Both played in the old AFL days. Both, the only thing that hampered them a little bit was the fact that, they played in the old AFL. Now, you hear some people say that, the AFL was inferior. The AFL didn't have as many good players. Joe Namath is the worst player in NFL history in the Hall of Fame. That's what some people say for some bullshit reason. I don't know why. They just do. But this is what I say. The AFL had close to equal talent as the NFL. Just because they kept the name of the NFL does not mean the AFL did not have very, very high-quality talent. Does that mean that Joe Namath wasn't good? I mean, I still think stuff with Joe Namath, the hate for him is almost very, very bandwagon-like, and I would say that a lot of those people that say that like to take things as much out of context as possible. And the same thing, so if you're putting that in perspective, does that mean Johnny Robinson isn't deserving because he's from the AFL? I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, the name of the thing, I think there's just a lot about him that I can sort of see how he rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Like even to this day, I just wonder how Susie Kobler feels about him.
Oh no, I think it's just actually when it comes to it's just looking at his stats and just saying his stats were terrible, but I said he played in the 1960s. It's a little different.
Oh, of course.
But they never mention that, obviously. Then again, not really shocking. So Talamini, Billy Cannon and George Bland, not Billy Cannon, but Billy Cannon was Billy Cannon also played with the Oilers during this time. He was good, but I was thinking about having him on there, but I almost kind of he's borderline for me. I mean, I was thinking about adding him. I mean, he was a 3-time AFL champion and a 2-time AFL All-Star. He's sort of on the fence. I could see him. I mean, he did recently die not too long ago, so I could see him a bit of a push for him. I wouldn't mind it. I would be in favor of it. He was also great at LSU. He was mostly known with the Oilers. And with both him and also George Blanda, they definitely benefited with Talamini as the guard. And they were running behind him. And Talamini was on the AFL's all-time second team. He was also on that second team along with Walt Fellini, a guy that we mentioned in the last part. And also the only other guard from there is that Bud, another guy from the guard. So three guards that definitely deserve to be in that aren't in yet. And Talamini as well. He was a 6-time AFL All-Star and a 7-time All in AFL. He was also a 3-time AFL champion, and he won the Super Bowl with the Jets. He spent his final year with the Jets. And unfortunately, because his career was kind of short, it was only 9 seasons, that might be a reason as to why he's not in. But even then, even though his career was short, I mean, 7-time All-AFL, and it's basically the same thing as an All-Pro. So you're basically a 7-time All-Pro and a 6-time Pro Bowler and a 3-time AFL champion and a Super Bowl champion in a span of 9 years? Whew. Wow. That's something special.
Are you looking at anyone who, and you said they're all Houston Oilers, so no one from the Titans? What about Steve McNair?
Well, we mentioned him. I mean, but Charlie Hennigan also has the most amount of yards in a single calendar month, and also is going for him, but it's not as much as Talamini. But unlike Talamini, Hennigan is in the very good class of 2014. So I guess he wasn't as very good, Talamini, or else he'd be there already. I guess that means he's not as very good. Both deserve to be in, mostly Talamini, but not before Sweeney. As for McNair, he did win co-MVP along with Peyton Manning back in 2003, and he really did make the Titans, known, especially in when they moved to Nashville. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, 1-time second-team All-Pro. He made the Super Bowl. He went to the Super Bowl, beating the Jaguars, and lost 1 yard short. And he spent his final 2 years with the Ravens. In fact, as his first year with the Ravens, he led the team to a 13-3 record where I think they lost to. I could be wrong, but I think they lost to the. Who did they lose to that year? I think they lost to the Patriots that year. I could be wrong though. Or was it the Colts? I know it was the Patriots. They lost to the Patriots that year, and then unfortunately, a couple years after he retired, he was murdered by his mistress, who then turned the gun on herself. His loss was really, really shocking, and I would definitely say, because I do feel bad for him, that does edge it a little bit. But I do feel like when it comes to McNair, you have Cunningham and McNabb who have far more on their plate that aren't in yet, even though I want both of those guys in. And they're not in yet. I wonder, with enough push in the future, I think McNair could have a chance. But right now, it's going to be a while. Right.
Anyone else that we're leaving off here from the Titans Oilers franchise?
There is actually a couple more. In terms of, there's also Ray Childress, who played for the Oilers in the 80s and 90s. Ray Childress was known for being a very, very physical player during his time. He was also 5-time All-Pro, 6-time All-Pro, and he had an NFL record of 3 fumble recoveries in only 1 game. And he was known against being against the pass, and he was always known for being very, very clutch. And he was also always known for always being there. Even when he separated his shoulder, he only, until he separated his shoulder in 1995, he basically played in every single game, essentially. But I feel like I said, not before Talamini, it's going to be a little bit of a while for him.
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of say, you can sort of say Eddie George, but
no, I don't know. They were stretching on that one.
And as for active guys, well, I was going to say 0 before, but now we have one, Cameron Wake. But I feel like he was a very underrated player for his time when he was with the Dolphins. He was very under the radar, considering the fact his teams were very, very perennially average, and now he's with a team, the Titans, which are also known for being very average. So I don't really know if that would really help him as much. However, you could say that, what could help him is how he made 1 Pro Bowl as an outside linebacker and 4 of them as a defensive end. And he also has the second most amount of sacks of all time by an undrafted free agent. The only one who has more is John Randall, but he has, from Cameron Wake's 98, John Riddle at 137.5. It's a pretty big difference there, but I don't see him making it. It would be nice, but there's better players, and because he was more underrated during his time with the Dolphins. I feel like when it comes to Dolphins fans, I'll mention that later, but even then, it's going to be a while for him. I might never make it. You never know. I don't know. It's a little sad, but, if Dolphins fans won, guys, just be relentless. That's how I put it. But there is one more Oiler, and that's the guy that created it all, Bud Adams.
Good one. I like that one a lot.
Bud Adams?
Yes.
Bud Adams is the second best owner that's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In terms of the 3 integral owners from the AFL, Lamar Hunt, Hall of Famer. Ralph Wilson, Hall of Famer. Bud Adams, not in the Hall of Fame yet. The only thing that I can see that has been against him is one could say, we never won a Super Bowl. Well, he did win 2 AFL champions, the very first 2 AFL championships, and Ralph Wilson never won a Super Bowl, but he went to 4 of them. I mean, I feel like as an owner, you could say Super Bowls help, but also a lot of things need to keep being factored in as well. Also has to be in terms of their importance to the league as well. One thing I could see against Adams is the fact that there's probably still a lot of people that are still pretty bitter the fact that he moved the Oilers out of Houston. But when I say about that, this is what I have to say about it. You have a team, okay? It's called the Texans. Give up. Move on. I mean, it's not like the Titans have really been that successful. I mean, the Titans have been the epitome of average. And come on. You still have the memories. And listen, the Titans moved. They're in Nashville. They're the Titans now. Okay? It's not like the team folded or anything. I mean, I can understand at first glance, but it's been 20 years. I think it's time to move on. I feel like when it comes to this, there's some of these situations in which you just need to just bury the hatchet, realize that it's also a business, and just.
It's easy to say until it's your team that relocates.
Oh, yeah. I mean, granted, I could never say that because I'm from New York. But, and I will mention his name down the road, but there is another guy that has this and might have a little bit more, but I would probably feel the same way on him. And people could bite me all they want, but this is what I say. I don't care what they say when it comes to that. I know that's a little bit blunt, but one, it's a business. I mean, Lamar Hunt moved the Chiefs from Dallas to Kansas City. The Rams were originally in Cleveland before they moved to Los Angeles in the 40s. I mean, the Redskins were originally in Boston.
And your city did lose the Dodgers and the Giants.
Exactly. Teams move sometimes. That's how it happens.
Well, I'm still a bitter Quebec Nordique fan, my friend.
And they moved back to Oakland. I mean, teams aren't loyal to players. Listen, this whole talk of loyalty to a city or players, that doesn't work in reality. In the real world, there's no such thing as loyalty when it comes to this stuff.
Damn.
It's that simple.
You're the young one. I'm the old one. I'm supposed to have this jaded opinion.
Do you?
No, I don't.
Like jaded opinion in thinking who cares?
I'm just old, crotchety, and drunk most of the time. Having said that, though, I'm a pretty chill individual. Except for my dog right now, who is not.
I mean, when it comes to, Bud Adams, he is a very, very influential leader. I mean, He was the guy that really... Like I said, he was one of the main three guys that really helped found the AFL, along with Ralph Wilson and Lamar Hunt. And, you can't tell the story of the AFL without having all three of them.
No, I hear you. So who are we So actually, let's move on here. Which division are we doing next?
I was originally going to say AFC North, but I feel like it'd be best that we go to the Patriots and the Three Stooges.
I think that one's going to be a much longer one than this one. So ready for that in a couple weeks?
I'm excited for the AFC East. Or as I like to call the AFC Least.
Yeah, well, we're entering your geographic area, my friend.
Yes, it's going to be very fun. It's going to be close to home, this one. I'm very, very excited, with the AFC East. It's going to be very fun. This one is going to be very, very close to home because also I would say another reason as to why is because, I'm going to be quite honest right here. I also have currently more guys on my list at the moment for the East than the North, even though there's a lot of guys from the North. But I know the East will be very, very fun, considering that, if you're talking about all AFL stuff, this is like a hotbed for it. Oh, man, it's
nice.
Like a big hotbed for it.
Well, Vinny, it's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to when we do this again.
Yeah, I can't wait for Kirk, and I hope you enjoy. I hope you're enjoying your move in Barbados.
Absolutely.
I hope your wife's enjoying it. I hope your dog's enjoying it. I hope that you're enjoying it. And I can't wait to do part 3 down the line.
That's why I'm on the beach every day. That's why I'm not jaded like you.
Well, also I'm a college student. I have to pay it. God knows how many loans I'm going to pay when I get older.
There you go. Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
See ya. Nice talking to you.